Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome live to Croke Park Studios today for the latest episode of The View, brought to you by our friends at Allianz. It is a bank holiday Monday. It's cold, it's dreary, it's a little bit grey, but please stick with us for the next hour and we will brighten up your afternoon looking back on an action-packed weekend of Allianz League action across both hurling and football. We have banished Noel Connors this week from the studio, but he will join us later on to look back on Waterford's victory over Limerick yesterday in Wildcard. But in the studio today with me, some very special guests. We have 2007 Footballer of the Year. Dragged him out of the kingdom just for the day that's in it. 8-hour round trip. He'll do anything for a few quid. It's Marc O'Shea. Also, we have 2024 All-Ireland winner from Armagh and recent retiree Stefan Campbell. And joining me to discuss the hurling action, we have 5-time Allianz National Hurling League winner Richie Hogan and award-winning author as well, I believe.
Well, yeah, okay, I'll take that. Yeah.
Marc, you won a couple of McGrath Cups as well. Was it 2 or 3, was it?
McGrath Cups, geez, Paddy, I haven't a clue how many McGrath Cups I have.
That's the main headliner here for you. McGrath Cup winner, yeah.
McGrath Cup, yeah, I won a few of them, but it wasn't really high up in the priorities now, to be totally honest with you. We'd be just dusting ourselves down at the end of a year. Obviously, All-Irelands were at September that time. So you'd be coming back, and the McGrath Cup was usually just for the new guys in, just to see what they were at. Being totally honest though, Paddy, I don't know how you were in this position over here. Have you done some sort of course over the last few months?
Well,
you're like Gary Lineker.
Yeah, come back to me in an hour, we'll see how this goes. But listen, big stories from the weekend again. Inter-county managers, and some of them are not happy. Ben O'Connor was not very happy with maybe the softness, as he put it, around hurling turning into soccer, in his words. Your old buddy, Soupy, Kieran McGeeney, was very frustrated with the interpretations of the rules on Saturday night in the latest epic game between Galway and Armagh, their rivalry. But inter-county management, Marc, since we last spoke, you have dipped your toe. You are now the Kerry minor football manager. How did that happen?
Yeah, well, I expressed an interest in it, Paddy. It's always something I wanted to do, get back in with Kerry at whatever level. And obviously, when you're growing up as a young boy, whatever county you're in, the big thing you always want to do was play Kerry minor, and when I played Kerry minor, lucky enough to play Kerry minor, it had a huge, profound effect on me. I remember 1998 playing in Croke Park, lucky enough to play in Croke Park. Kerry were playing Kildare in the senior game that day, and that day had a huge, I knew I wanted to play with Kerry seniors after that. So yeah, that was it's great. I've been stuck into it now with the management group for the last month or two, and it's going good. It's early days, trying to get familiar with the players, cutting panels, difficult thing to do. I know we're going to be talking about that later on, and it's a hard thing to do because you want to see how good these players are first of all, you know. And
difficult for underage.
Yeah, and so it's great, Paddy. It's really exciting. As I say, it's to be in with your own county, so it's so enjoyable at the moment, and you never know. Hopefully, we'll have a good year.
Stefan, on your side as well, you're in with the Armagh 20, so straight away retiring just before Christmas. Was it always something you'd planned to get into the coaching side, or is this more dipping your toe?
No, I dipped a toe in 2 years ago. Same management team, Barry Hogan from my own club, and Aidan Lloyd. So probably I got 2 months done with them 2 years ago. Our schedule sort of clashed after Christmas, and then last year I only really got in for a few weeks. But yeah, I was delighted. I didn't retire thinking that I was going to jump straight back into it, but I was happy that the call came, and obviously a wee bit like Marc there, we're a couple of months in, still about 6 weeks out from championship, but things are moving well.
Richie, you haven't, you've decided to stay away from the side.
Never been asked, Paddy. Maybe I don't know as much as I thought I did.
Well, hey, listen, there was a viral clip. This man, he was still doing his thing for Danesford in the Leinster Intermediate Hurling Championship. Did I see you coming off the bench, dusting off the ash guards to come on and win?
Very briefly, briefly, and that'll be as brief as it gets, I'd say.
So we're not going to see you in the black and amber this summer out there?
Absolutely not. Absolutely
no.
not.
Okay, you're happy enough for now. Well, anyway, let's kick into the weekend's Allianz Hurling League action. It was round 2, and the Rebels under Ben O'Connor roared once again.
Brian Hayes on Bowser Kirk the Helle Hooder also again. Well, Tasha should never Celine Koenig. Meath. There's the goal. Fitzgerald.
Joining me to discuss this alongside Richie, we'll keep the two lads here as well. They might learn something about hurling. But we have Waterford's Noel Connor. We banished them from the studio after last week's tip. He backed Antrim to beat Clare in the wildcard round. Noel, how did that one work out for you?
Not great, Paddy. Not great at all. Thanks for the introduction anyway.
Well, it's great to be back. Listen, your boys got off to a great start yesterday. They had a win against John Kiley's Limerick in Walsh Park. What was the big story from that? That's a surprising result.
The surprise, I would say, for the vast majority of people, including myself, was the performance difference. The performance difference was obviously completely different to what we've seen the previous weekend's Cork down in Cork. And again, listen, it's so hard to know with the league. It's incredibly competitive. It's so close to championship. So it's every manager is going to take a different approach to it. I sense Peter probably targeted this game more so than the Cork game because it was our first game at home, and it's easier then to try and build that fortress. Like Walsh Park hasn't been a place for success over the last number of years, and the Munster League itself hasn't been overly favourable to Waterford. So I think that was probably one aspect to it. But a beating like that down in Cork is no better way to kind of change the mindset of players.
How did they go about it? No, what did they do specifically to get the better at Limerick yesterday?
To be honest, I think that they were very, very well structured. First and foremost, I think that their tactics were on point, and there's probably a couple of reasons for it. Firstly, I think that they obviously brought in Donegal O'Rourke as a hurling coach. He worked under Pat Ryan for quite a number of years in Cork's, I suppose, success without actually getting to the Ireland final. So he probably had an interesting kind of story and background into how Cork went to dismantle Limerick over the last number of years. So I'd say he had some impetus. Also, I think that the personnel changes were very different, but also the first point is probably the speed in which they tried to get their puck outs out. So Billy was on goal. Now, he got pulled on his very first puck out, but if we can see here when he's highlighted, his first instinct here is, before the ball has even gone dead, he's thrown over to the umpire that has the ball and try and get the ball out as quick as possible. And ultimately, why that is the case is everybody knows how structurally sound the Limerick team is. So what I can see here is they're trying to really nearly do a Cork on it and try and get the ball back into play as quick as possible so that Limerick can't get into that structure. Again, there's quite a number of clips here that I could have picked out, 10 or 20, I think about 5 of them that I picked out, where it's literally ball is before it's dead, before the white flag is raised or gone wide, they have the ball out into the full back line as quick as possible, which definitely disrupted Limerick because they couldn't hold their shape. And the one thing that we've learned over the last number of years with Limerick is they're very zonal, which teams have to some extent exploited, particularly Cork over the last 2 years. And we could even see when Waterford actually decide to go long, what they actually did was they changed quite a lot. So we saw last week Cork doing this pocket again. It could be influenced by Doug Stone O'Rourke, but Waterford actually went with 4 in the full back line. Okay, and that gave them, here we can see the full back line here, but also drags a half back or a midfielder back. Because everybody knows that, or everyone is familiar that Limerick are going to go zonal, what they do is they pull one of their half forwards out the field, which creates the space inside. Now the big thing here for Waterford is to get the ball to the half back as opposed to the full back line. If you get the ball to the half back line, it then means that it's taken away the pressure to try and break the line. We can see here, this is actually Will O'Donoghue, and they used the left-hand side quite a lot because it was either Will O'Donoghue on the left-hand side or Dermot Burns, so they didn't want to naturally hit it onto that side. So they tried to expose Colin Coughlin's side quite a lot. The ball goes in high here, and Mikey Kiley, great catch, but again, he's surrounded by people. So I do think the puck out and the strategy that they went with was either quick puck out or bring 7 defenders back, try and get the ball to the half back line, and then it's kind of open road in front of you.
Yeah. Richie, I suppose a lot of talk around this Limerick team, John Kiley, that dominant team for years and years and years. Major surprise last year when they knocked out of the championship by Dublin. A lot of talk this year might be, is there one more sting in the tail from this Limerick team that they could go on and win that All-Ireland? Is it, where are they at? Or was there anything yesterday that you've seen, or even winning the Munster Hurling League? What are your thoughts on Limerick for the season ahead?
I think certainly you'd be very foolish to write them off, because to be fair to them, they win far more than they lose, and especially on the biggest occasion, they do perform. And any time that they have been beaten over the last couple of years in really serious games, they've been beaten by incredible performances from the other team. They've certainly come back to the pack, there's no doubt about that. Last year during the league especially, I think John Kiley, in the last 2 leagues, played a lot of their newer players who came through the under-20s. They played Kilkenny in an All-Ireland final and an under-20 final a couple of years back. A lot of those guys have come through. However, I think what he's probably realised is they're maybe not as good as the exceptional once-in-a-generation team that they've had. So it's very hard to then make the decision, oh look, a guy is 31, 32, you know, do I feed in a guy here and give him a year or two and sacrifice a bit of success in order to build something long term? Very hard to do that in Munster because you get knocked out very quickly. You know, like to get out of Munster is incredibly hard. So what we saw...
Is that a challenge you would have faced with your Kilkenny team? When you were that dominant and Cody was there, did you feel he always needed to try and bring in 2 or 3 players to keep the show on the road? Or?
Yeah, now ours was a little different. Like this Limerick team is built off of 2 very successful under-21 All-Ireland winning sides in 2015 and 2017. All of the players came from that group and they're all around the same age. In Kilkenny, we won... a plethora of All-Ireland titles at minor and under-21 over a 10 or 11-year period. So we were always able to filter those guys in. I won an under-21 All-Ireland in 2008. And that year, myself and TJ Reid were the only guys on the panel. We weren't even on the team. And the following year, after winning that, it was still just the 2 of us. Yeah. So we had loads of guys who under 21 All-Ireland success, and they were sitting in the Hogan stand watching the game, wanting to be out there. And these were guys like Paul Murphy, Colin Fennelly, and they all went on to be stars. So, like, it's not easy break those guys in, but you know, we were able to bring in 1 or 2 and not upset much. Whereas I think their best guys are still those guys who are now between the age of 29 and 30, you know.
No, you alluded to it there, just in terms of talking about how Cork maybe got the better of John Kiley's team last year, and even what Peter Queally and Waterford did yesterday in Walsh Park. Is there a team starting to figure out this Limerick team, or did we see anything different? Even yesterday, their debut in the Allianz Leagues, did we see them trying to do anything different? What are they trying to add to their bow if they are going to regain the Liam McCarthy later this year?
I don't necessarily think that they'll change too much. Like they've, as Richie said, like they've been an incredible team over the last decade, really. So they're not going to like reinvent the wheel. I'd say he was more disappointed the fact that Waterford went out and wanted to win the game and without trying to like sound that they're not offering much here, but that was the reality. If you look at the ruck balls, the bodies around the ball, even the couple of frees like Arrowed Hegarty and them gave away was purely down to over carrying ball because it was 3 or 4 Waterford lads quite literally hanging off the Limerick lads, which wasn't the case on the other side. I think there was probably 3 or 4 times that Limerick over carried the ball, which is very un-Limerick like. But also I think the way in which Peter Queally set up, I think that had a huge impact as well on how Limerick couldn't actually implement anything quite different. Like he played Shane Bennett wing back. Most people probably would have seen Shane being a corner forward under probably Derek and various other people, but back in 2013 he won an Ireland final, minor Ireland final wing back. So he has definitely the legs, the athleticism, the hurling. He got, I think was 1-2, he got the penalty, but he got 2 points from play and 2 incredible points. They also have Callum Lyons back from Australia after 3 years, and he was wing forward. Now he's naturally a defender, so he would have played the vast majority of his time in the full back line, maybe midfield in more recent years, but he has that kind of defensive mindset. So even a lot of the balls that he picked up was in defence. So like there has definitely been a change in the guard to that regard with Waterford. And like even under Derek, like it's funny because we played Conor Gleeson corner forward under Derek. But Conor Gleeson came straight out the field. He never stayed in the forwards. He came back to mark somebody in either midfield or in the half back line or full back line. So you can start to see that Peter is maybe looking at some of the things that worked in the past and try to get maybe the 15 best players onto the pitch, irrespective of what position they're playing in.
Jeez, no, God help us if Waterford keep winning. I asked you about Limerick there and you did 10 minutes on Waterford.
No, but you were asking, Paddy, the question you asked me was on the basis, though, did Limerick do anything different? My answer was...
If Waterford keep winning, we'll let you back into the studio, all right? We'll let you back in next week, okay? But if we look at the other big game from the weekend was Saturday night, and we seen Cork under Ben O'Connor, new management, they roared to their second victory. Pretty feisty game in Salt Hill against Galway, Richie. It was a testy affair.
Yeah, and great to see it. Because especially at this time of year, whatever about football, hurling at this time of year can be extremely difficult because, you know, the ball is skidding off the hurl, you know, it's not hopping off the ground, everything is slower. So it can be so unrealistic in terms of what you're going to play against later on in the season. And it was a great test. I was actually, you know, Galway have no points on the board, but I was really impressed with them. They showed maybe a little bit of what they had lacked in recent years. They've always kind of had the hurling, but I thought their work rate, their tackling was outstanding. Their discipline was outstanding as well. They didn't give away that many frees, yet the amount of times that those Cork guys broke through and there was a hook or a block or something was spoiled. And that's what you're looking for at this time of year, especially from younger players who we know have a bit of talent. But then, of course, to ask them to go on and beat, you know, one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the country who are actually at their peak now is a different challenge. So, yeah, Cork will be certainly very happy. Ben O'Connor is definitely a very understated person. You know, he plays things down. He doesn't get hugely excited. You know, he's not buying into the atmosphere, the crowd. He's keeping everything low key, and that probably will suit them, I believe.
I suppose one of the big stories, obviously we've seen one of the stars of last year's championship, Brian Hayes. Noel, you did a little piece on him last week as well. He came off the bench to make his debut. Marc, we would have seen him on the football side. Yeah. A brilliant impact for St Finbarrs in their run to the Munster Club football final. But he was back to his old self, Noel, at the weekend, off the bench and doing what he does best with 2 brilliant goals for Cork.
Yeah, and you're right, Paddy. We spoke about this last week. As in, last week we said that Cork were very different in their approach. They used the sides quite a lot, whereas they probably weren't getting as much success from using the flanks. Whereas when he came on, they were far more direct. And as you said, he's a focal point where you can get the ball into him, and he's so big and aggressive, and his hurling has come on no end. That once the ball goes near him, he has an incredible finish, very athletic. So it's actually funny because Cork were struggling slightly when the ball was going down the wings. Whereas they changed the game plan, and they decided to bring in Brian Hayes, and they knew then once they get the ball into him that they're going to get some success from him. But fabulous, like he's taken off again this season, which is kind of slightly worrying for the rest of us.
He's such an outlet, isn't he? And you alluded to it, Richie. 0 points so far from Micheál Donoghue's Galway team, but you've seen enough that ultra competitive Leinster Championship as well. There's green shoots for Galway, even though they've lost these 2 games. 2 tough games as well to start off with. Yeah,
for sure. Like they've played the All-Ireland champions and the Munster champions in consecutive games, and I think it will get a little bit easier for them. But I certainly did see something different from Galway. Newer guys coming through, you know, Aaron Nyland, Jason Rabbit, and these guys who we haven't seen much of before. They're coming through, and what they're doing is they're not going out to try and do any flashy stuff. They're going out and they're working hard, and then when the ball does come, they're doing that what they can do with it. And still, and I mentioned this before about Galway, you always want to see a couple of experienced lads, but you don't want to see kind of 10 guys over 30, but you want to see a handful of guys there to bring that bit of experience. So it's great to have, and I think that's probably why they've lined out with Dahi Burke so early in the season, and Pádraig Mannion and his brother Cahill obviously around the middle of the field. Important to have those 3 guys there so that you're not sending out a really experienced team and they're getting a bad experience. These guys are you know, driving the thing on with them and making the thing very solid for them.
And if we stick on the Leinster Championship just on that note, Kilkenny obviously will be favourites. Dublin had a brilliant game last week against Clare. We've seen on the other side of the fence, Wexford nip and tuck with Down. They got the job done in the end. They're 2 from 2, but they struggled to beat Down. They struggled to beat Antrim last week. If we look at Wexford and what we feel will be a really competitive Leinster Hurling Championship, where are they at for the season ahead?
So it's really hard to know, because obviously St Martin's won one of the most brilliant Leinster club finals that I've ever seen. St Martin's won it, and won it well in Croke Park. And you would imagine that so many of those guys would add a huge amount to it. Now, Rory O'Connor is going to be a massive loss. They'd love to have Barry O'Connor, who's obviously not available. Jack O'Connor's not the most reliable at this stage of his career with injury. He does struggle with injury a little bit. And obviously Lee Chin is missing. So how do we judge what we've seen there? We saw Kevin Foley got a couple of points. I would say it's...
Can they do anything in the Leinster Championship?
It's hard to know. They haven't done much in the last couple of seasons in terms of qualification. I would be worried that they don't go the same way as Offaly went for a couple of years, which would be a big struggle. You know, we want to see them competitive in the Leinster Championship. They'll certainly target beating Dublin and Galway. They'll feel themselves, especially if they have home games, that they can beat those two teams. And then they always fancy themselves against Kilkenny, even though Kilkenny certainly are a better standard team over the last couple of years. But I really don't know. I'm certainly not writing them off, but the first couple of games have been worrying. Like, there's no doubt about it.
Noel, your neighbours down the sunny southeast, not Waterford here now. Can you tell us, what do you think about Wexford for the season ahead?
Yeah, they're definitely struggling.
Okay.
It's a hard one because I know Keith Rossiter has done like Trojan work trying to get like players in and more or less go to every club in the county to try and figure out like who's promising, who can offer something different. So it's not as if the work has not been done by the management team, but the performances are definitely not there. Like obviously Conor MacDonald is not there. The word on the street is he's not going back to play this year, which again is another person who has had vast experience over the last decade, which Wexford can't afford to lose those type players. They're a very different outfit with Lee Chinder, but the unfortunate thing is he's on the other side of his career in the sense that he's kind of like Jack O'Connor, Richie said, that if he picks up an injury or two, he could struggle to get back fit. And again, you can't rely on one player solely to drive it on. Like, they're playing Offaly, or they're playing, who are they playing this weekend? And I think they're playing Carlow this weekend, actually, on Saturday night. And I think that will actually be a huge struggle because Offaly played quite well in their first round against Down at home. So that will probably be a bit of a more of an acid test for Wexford to see where they're really at.
Well, look, we will get to the wildcard weekend now in a few minutes. But look, the biggest game from this weekend, we see a repeat of last year's All-Ireland Hurling final down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. They're both 2 from 2. Liam Cahill and Tipperary have hit the ground running. Cork, as we've mentioned, under Ben O'Connor. What a game this Saturday night in the park. What do you expect to see?
It'll be great. Now, I hope both teams go fully at it. You know, pick their best possible teams. Like, you know, and we all know it's hard to know. You never go out to not perform. You know, you never go out to say, oh, we're not focusing on this game. But I hope they pick the best team that they have available and they both go 100% at it. And I hope there's a big crowd at it. And I always think that the game will rise to that standard, especially down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. It'll be close to summer hurling with the conditions that will, regardless of whether it's raining or not, but with the magnificent pitch that they have down there. So I can't wait for it. Who's going to win? I don't know. I think, like, will Cork specifically say, right, we're going to put down a marker here now? Doesn't always work out that way, though, as we all know. Tipperary have really pushed on since last season, and they're looking very good for the rest of the league and championship.
Noel, does it surprise you that both of these teams haven't gone all the way to the final last year? They've started the season so well, and I suppose on your side, who do you expect to come out on top on Saturday night?
I say Richie is devastated because he thought the big game was going to be Kilkenny against Limerick. So you're probably after shedding a tear for poor Richie there beside you. I actually think Tip will probably win, and I think Tip will put out a full team. I think Liam Cahill, Mikey Beavens and all his crew, they only want one thing, and that's to win every game. I don't think that they see beyond every game they play, whereas I think the likes of Ben O'Connor and Ronan Curran and all them, I think that they're not that Tip are not strategic, but I think that they're probably looking at longer term down the track of trying to bring in more and more players. Bear in mind, is this the 4th or 5th year Liam Cahill is there? So he's trying to get as much wins under his belt as possible, whereas with Ben O'Connor, and we've seen it probably in the first round against Waterford, that it was a very different type of play that we've seen Cork since Ben have come in. And also bear in mind, like Cork had a test and match this week against Galway up in Salthill, whereas Tipperary went with a very under-strength team against Offaly up in Offaly and still won quite comfortably. So not that it's a weak rest for them, but it's definitely a weak rest for some of the more senior lads on the Tip team. So I do think that Tip will probably win that, but I don't think the margin will be anything major.
Okay, well, look, that's the marquee game, as we mentioned. We'll give you a chance to redeem yourself with our wildcard picks for the week ahead, Richie. So this is your debut on this. What we're looking for is what will potentially be the biggest upset of the weekend. So, look, we've got your take on the big game between Cork and Tip on Saturday night. But, Richie, if we go through the fixtures, we have Waterford against Offaly, Kilkenny take on Limerick, Cork versus Tip, as we said, Carlow take on Wexford, Clare take on Down, and it's Kildare versus Antrim. One of those teams needs a win. So what will be the biggest upset? Who's going to come out on top and why?
I think maybe as Noel said earlier, I think it's Carlow and Wexford. While would be seen as an upset, Carlow are a top class Joe McDonough side, and Wexford missing so many players, struggled with Antrim and with Down. I think Carlow certainly, and local rivals as well. I'd say that could be one to watch.
Okay. No, was that the same one you were going to pick, or are you on the spot now again? Have you done your homework this week?
This is like Kelly last week. Kelly looking at the sheet that I wrote.
We'll let you go first next week.
So I wouldn't forget.
promise.
It's like Richie's equivalent there to listen to me, so he can get the answer. Things never change, Paddy.
Well, who's your wildcard pick this week? Come on, redeem yourself.
I do think it's the Carlow Wexford on Saturday night down in Wexford Park.
Pick someone else now. Come on.
The caveat there now, Paddy, with that one is, I think if Lee Chin plays, I think Wexford win. Without Lee Chin, I think Carlow will win.
You're going to just say the exact same as Richie. You're not going to pick any of the other games.
I just gave you the answer like 5 minutes ago. Like it's.
I can change mine if you want.
I could give you a different anser, but it's the reality of what I think.
Okay, we'll give you that one. Richie, do you want to go one more go?
Yeah, maybe. I think Offaly having a couple of maybe a poor game against Tipperary might be a bit of sting in the tail there. Could shock Waterford. Okay. They've done it before, so maybe, yeah.
Well, look, we'll keep an eye on that over the weekend. So Richie's going to hang on with us. Noel, we will see you. Enjoy the rest of your bank holiday. We'll catch up in person next week to review the weekend's action. But it's on to the football next with Marc and Stefan. It was an action-packed weekend again across Saturday and Sunday in the Allianz Football Leagues.
Possibilities. Matty Tierney! Still going. It opens up for Conor Glass. Glass might go for it. Glass!
Chancer Borja is done number for sucking in that open. Pasha Tortfell, Kufla, Pasha Hassan Flynn, Pasha fight it. You have to come on down in them. And that had second half, that had 3 to 10 here.
Yeah, as shown, another action-packed weekend across both Saturday and Sunday night. But look, I suppose some of the big stories from the weekend again, guys, managerial discontent across some of the decisions. And Saturday night was a brilliant game up in the Boxit Athletic Grounds between Galway and Armagh. Stefan, your old manager, Kieran McGeady, was probably rightly frustrated with a major call just before half-time resulted in a Galway goal. Talk us through it and your thoughts on it.
I think he'd every right to be incensed, more so to do with the timing of it. I think it came at a time where Armagh were so dominant in the game. They looked like they were cruising, and probably 6 or 7 points wouldn't have flattered them. They were breaking through the Galway defence so easily, whereas I felt like Galway were maybe having to work much harder for the scores. But on the decision itself, obviously the 4 metre rule is in the rule book, the buffer zone, and for the linesman to make that call was massive at that period of the game where Armagh was so dominant. I think that was then compounded by Boy Cassidy getting another big call incorrect. I felt personally that Malloy should have been. Malloy was probably more of a backyard offence, in my view. Call me biased if you want, but Armagh could easily been playing against 13 for the last 5 or 6 minutes of that period, or the first half, and ultimately Galway wrestled back the momentum in the game and somehow went in, I think, a point up.
Yeah, and Marc, just for people who mightn't have seen it at home, it was Joe McElroy who was coming over to Kieran McGeady to basically say he was injured and he was going to come off. And it was called that was a breach, a free was given, and Rob Trinity actually ended up in the goal. And it was such a momentum swing. Marc, now that you're on the sideline as a manager, do you have sympathy with Kieran McGeady, or it is a frustrating one? I think we're all in agreement it was probably the incorrect call.
You mentioned it, Paddy. It's the frustration and big games. These two teams played in an All-Ireland final a couple of years ago. So there's huge rivalry there. And I do think that, of course, McGeeney's going to be frustrated after that, particularly, when he's talking about Joe McElroy. And you could see the frustration afterwards in the interview. He wasn't interfering with play. That's the big thing there. And he's going over to try and get a message into his manager that he's injured, and we see the result, the goal, and it is a huge momentum changer. And Stefan is right. Armagh were in control, and all of a sudden those momentum changers, they're massive, and Galway obviously go on to win it. So yeah, we spoke off air that Armagh are going to be thereabouts for All Ireland, but these games are huge for the development of players. And when you win games, particularly at home, do you know what I mean? They're massive, and yeah, you could see the frustration with Kieran McGeeney for sure.
And Stefan, it wasn't just the breach as well. There was so little between these two teams, as there always is. We've seen that over the last number of years. But Armagh will be frustrated, okay, maybe with the referee, but also in front of the post, you feel they left a lot of scores behind them.
Yeah, I felt like I could feel the frustration in Kieran's voice too, because it wasn't just the officials. He's seen this as a good chance. He's seen this as a good chance to go 2-2 into the break, having left a lot of points behind. We see this one from Andrew Mernon here. The forward line come in to get a press on. Very unlucky to give a free kick away, but obviously we'll see what happens. The ball's touch and go, coming over halfway, and Armagh kind of 6s and 7s can't really get a hand on. And then Rob Finnerty comes up with a big back door, great set of hands, lays it off to Kieran Malloy, and the ball's in the back of the net. And on my count, the 3 balls that dropped short on the 2 breaches probably cost Armagh 2 goals and 3 points on the day, which was massive.
You can't afford that at that level, to be dropping balls short into the keeper. Obviously Gleeson's a big man, but at inter-county level, you can't afford that. And as Stefan said, we saw the result of them.
The margins are so fine, aren't
massive,
they?
Massive,
yeah, it is. But look, it was another classic game between both of those teams, and as we said, you would expect to see those guys at the business end of the championship as well. But look, the next big story, I suppose, from the weekend, it was on TV yesterday as well, into Division 2, and the Royal Renaissance continues up in Breffni Park, Marc. What a performance by them, and Robbie Brennan's men, they're 2 from 2 in Division 2.
Well, this is it, All-Ireland semi-final last year, albeit well beaten by Donegal, but from a Meath point of view, and I suppose from a Leinster point of view, we've seen Dublin being so dominant for years, but now, Meath, they had a serious season last year, and it's about pushing on again this year. And we see here coming down the stretch, they're a point down, and this 2-pointer from Jack Flynn is massive. They really have got players, forwards that can score, that can hurt you. The likes of Costello, the likes of Frayne, the likes of Morris. And
man here, Jordan Morris, I think he was a bit disappointed he didn't get that ball.
I loved his reaction. Jack Flynn obviously used him as a decoy, and he didn't look to be too happy about that, but he did suck a defender in 1 yard to the left, which gave Jack an easier shot. And what an attempt that was, what a connection. He nearly kicked the ball out of the ground.
Yeah, and you can see how much it means to Robbie Brennan there as well, getting that
buzz around this team, isn't there?
Absolutely, and this is the thing, and you're not just reliant on 1 or 2 players. There's quality in this Meath team. They will obviously be very disappointed with the All-Ireland semi-final went last year, but it's about building now for this National League campaign. It's about getting up to Division 1 possibly. And that's the big thing for Robbie Brennan, is just to see, can we see progress again this year, because there was huge progress last year, starting with the Leinster Championship with that huge win over Dublin.
You touched on it, Marc, we mentioned him, Jordan Morris, one of the stars of last year's, one of the breakout stars last year's championship as well. Even last week, tearing it up in the Sigerson Cup, and then he goes and does that yesterday again. He was man of the match. You would have been a man marking cornerback many years ago. What would you have done with Jordan Morris? Handful.
Well, look, like anything with, say, if you're coming up against a top forward, the first thing you try and do with these guys is deny possession straight away. Try and get that ball before they do. But when they get that ball, they're so direct, they take you on, and the best forwards have both feet.
He's a throwback, isn't he? The way he plays,
he's
so direct.
But I think also from a Meath point of view, if you're the opposition and if you're setting up for Meath, you're not just looking at Jordan Morris, you're looking at Frayne, you're looking at Costello, you're looking at Flynn, you're looking at these fellas that can hurt you on the scoreboard. So it's not necessarily, okay, we've got to focus totally on this guy. So you're looking at 2 or 3 man markers. And I suppose with the introduction of the new rules, we have seen that out and out defending, one-on-one defending is more difficult, and players have gone away from that because of the way players have got bodies behind the ball in years past. But yeah, so look, he is a handful. He's like Robbie Brennan's going to try and wrap him in cotton wool, because he's their go-to man.
Kind of a big saying this summer.
Yeah,
now, if we stick in Division 2, on the other side, Stefan, probably more on your side, we've seen Derry take on Tyrone on Saturday night, and Derry, for the first time in 18 months, finally got a result going their way. Brilliant win for them. The last time they beat the Rossies in March 2024, but they beat their neighbours on Saturday night. So brilliant for Ciara Mina's men. But on the other side as well, for Tyrone, no wins from the first 2 games, and everyone had them as the stonewall promotion candidates. So what did you make of that on Saturday?
I thought we seen the good and the bad of Derry. I know they got over the line. There were some impressive performances. From Glass, obviously, and Rogers dominating the midfield.
They're go-to guys,
I think Connor's just put one in the stanchion there for the 3rd year in a row. I'm sure Niall Morgan's sick of the sight of him at this stage, but I just thought Conor Doherty had a huge influence in the game. I thought McGrogan was excellent at full back. I thought McKinless was excellent. I just feel that they were a wee bit green and naive up top when the ball got into the hands of Lachlan and Lachlan Murray. And these boys, I think they've got a really good foundation at the back that they can build on. With the guys that I've mentioned, I would just like to see them taking them simple scores when they present themselves. We just see Doherty getting involved here. He's a serious engine. He actually caught another kick out for Glass's goal. I felt against Meath he got caught in the 3 back a lot, which probably restricted him. But this guy here, he's too much energy, too much pace, and he doesn't always get the credit he deserves. But he would be one player that I would definitely be building that team around.
You mentioned that energy, isn't it? It's like Conor McKinless at his best. That really nearly throwing the shackles off and attacking from half back. It's Derry at their best, isn't it?
It is, but Paddy, we've been up in Celtic Park. We've seen the quality these fellas possess. It's crazy to think that. Like, what did you say? 18 months since they've won a game. It's crazy. And like, incredible. You look at I suppose the controversy with managers and when Mickey Hart came in and all of this. And I think Kieran Mean is there now, and I think he's the right man to be at the helm. And it's great that they got a victory. On the other side, you're looking at Tyrone, and you're looking at Malachy going in there. And we obviously, as the longer Malachy has a team, the better they will get. I still wouldn't be too worried at the moment. It's early days. It's it's winter football. It's National League early days. I definitely think there's going to be improvements with Tyrone.
Still for promotion?
Say that?
Still up for promotion, Tyrone?
Yeah, it's early days. 2 games into the National League. There's no panic buttons just yet.
I'm not sure. They
need an Armagh man. I thought you might come in here, Stefan.
They're light on a few players. I think they're going to have to win.
Right.
I think the way Cork's moving and the way Meath are moving, they're going to have to win every game. The way they're playing at the minute, I just don't know if it's possible.
Said with a smile on your face, Stefan. You mentioned the Cork, your old pals, Marc.
Yeah.
2 from 2.
Yeah.
They got out of jail against Cavan last week, but they had a good win against the Leinster champions, Louth, at the weekend. Is this the year they're going to get promoted?
You'd hope so from a Cork point of view. The big thing I was actually really looking at this weekend, because I've always seen with Cork down through the years, is the lack of consistency.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been there, and they might take a big scalp here or there, but you mentioned Brian Hayes earlier, the talk of the dual player, that's gone. Can you imagine if they had a player of his calibre? We've seen him for the Bars against Donegal in the club championship, and the influence that he had. He, what a footballer he is. But look, John Cleary, I think he's building. He's definitely building a team here and from a Kerry point of view, you'd love to see Cork coming, because any time Kerry were in their pomp, Cork were always putting it up to them. You go back to as far as 09, Kerry winning All-Ireland. Cork come back in 2010 and win the All-Ireland. So it's good to see Cork coming. I like to see the consistency in their game, to go up to Louth, Leinster champions, get a win there, that's massive. So that's what John Cleary is going to be trying to do, get those wins and build momentum.
Cork in Division 1, you feel like, particularly for the Munster championship down your neck of the woods, it's probably imperative that they get up there.
Yeah.
You mentioned Kerry. The other massive game from the weekend was yesterday on TG Carr. It was a repeat of last year's All-Ireland final, but a different result this time. No thanks to Dara O'Boyle with a stunning performance, and he got the goal. We see this, Marc. You were a bit disappointed we were watching this clip off air. Kerry just wide open at the back. What happened?
They were, yeah. And if you look at Dara O'Boyle at the end of this clip here, from Jack O'Connor's point of view, he'll be looking at the tape here, and You know, there was a lack of concentration, definitely, where O'Boyle just peeled off. Plenty of time there and lovely composure. Yeah, great composure to bring it around. Shane there, great goal. I think it was Armagh Heinrich that tried to get a block down, but it was just too late. But yeah, so from Kerry's point of view, I don't think Jack is going to be too disappointed.
No.
You look at the amount of players that Kerry were missing there yesterday, and I suppose also added to that, you look at Kerry and you could nearly say they have 3 new players this year in Paul Ganey, Tom Sullivan and Diarmuid O'Connor. 3 players who were unavailable last year. So you have to add them into the frame as well. So you're looking at the competition for places. You're missing the 2 best half-backs in the country in Brian O'Begley and Gavin White the last day. And obviously you're missing David and Paddy. But look, on the game itself, like for Kerry to go up there, the performance Seanie O'Shea put in was massive.
Exceptional.
It was massive. And you know, you're coming up against a situation where Donegal were totally dominant in the middle of the field, and those 2-pointers from Langan were massive. But for Kerry to come back into it the way they did, you know, hats off them.
Stefan, from the Donegal side, Jim McGuinness played down the victory yesterday, but they're going for 3 Ulster titles in a row. Was there maybe nearly a score settled yesterday just to really park last year's All-Ireland final? Did we learn anything different from Donegal? They look like the form team so far after the first 2 rounds.
I think they are. They definitely look like they've more work done than Kerry yesterday. There was a few isolated scenarios where Donegal defenders were lining up their counterpart and they were able to round them and pull away. We've seen that in various times. That's not going to be the case in 2 or 3 months' time. But I just felt like you could see that Donegal, it meant more to them. They played 9 of the All-Ireland or final team, as opposed to O'Connor lining out just the mere 4 coming down the country. But I was impressed with the likes of O'Boyle, who started the season well.
He gets on the end of things, doesn't he? He's a real scoring threat from the half-forward line.
Yeah,
this time last year he was excellent during the National League as well.
He carries a real swagger, but then I think McGuinness used him as an impact later in the year. I think Conor O'Donnell's got off the flyer. He's really impressed me. He's really tidied up his game. I remember him coming to the athletic grounds about 4 years ago, and you could tell he was 2-footed, but he looked unorthodox off both feet, and you're almost telling him to shoot. He looks like he's tidied his game up so much. He's put a lot of effort into that, and you would go as far as saying he's probably the main man up there at the minute with O'Boyle, and then obviously we have the fly-in cornerback of Paddy Andrews, and then obviously Finbar, Rudy. They're in serious form. They're in serious shape, but I do expect the pack to come and close that gap.
We also seen our old buddy, Marc. Big Murph was back out, so he talked out yesterday. So it's another year without him this year. We'll have to make do with Paddy McBrearty, an able substitute. But
yeah, and he threw himself about as well when he came in fairness to him, as he always does.
He has tendency to do. Great to see him back though, and for a Donegal perspective.
It is, and just the roar from the crowd when he comes on. He just has an aura about him, doesn't he, Paddy? And he got the last score as well, you know, just to make sure the win. But yeah, and anytime he gets on the ball, I think he attracts the opposition, you know, which leads to other fellas being free. And of course, he just always just does the right thing on the ball. You know, what a footballer. We saw close up above and up the country when we were doing our GA Plus, and there's Big Murph on the sideline. Nobody's looking for your autograph or my autograph. It's always Big Murph.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough, though, to be fair. Look, 2 from 2 for Donegal, but the other big story is Andy Moran's Mayo. They're off to a flying start as well. Only a couple of years ago, it would have been Dublin Mayo, would have been the big game over the weekend. Maybe it's a sign of where both those teams are at. But for Andy Moran and his Mayo team, a comprehensive win in Castlebar yesterday. They're 2 from 2 in the league. Are we seeing something maybe a little bit freer in how they play, in terms of how they attack? He spoke about it afterwards as well, the importance of just racking up bigger scores for Mayo. It's always been a challenge for them. But impressed with what we've seen so far from...
Yeah, I think so. Look, I said it at the start of the year. I said, watch Mayo. I think Andy Moran, I marked him a good few times, Paddy. He just has this energy about him. We've seen him with Leitrim.
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm. We've seen him with Leitrim. We've seen him with Cavan in the background. He's a phenomenal coach, and I think that he's going to get, if anybody is going to get the best out of these Mayo fellas, it's Andy Moran. And I think, you know, they've had a great start to the year. And they're a team that at this time of the year, look, you don't want to come up against them because they're playing really good football, high octane, full of energy. And like, you've the likes of Ryan O'Donoghue now in the 40. Like, you know, we heard Andy after the game talking about what he expected from any player who's not in the inside three, the work rate that he's expecting from them. And he highlighted him. I mean, there was times you saw him back in the full back line, and I think he expects that throughout the team, you know, and that's what he's going to bring. He's going to bring this work rate, this ferocious work rate. And with that, look, we all know that the quality of players that Mayo possess. So can they get that consistency? We spoke about it with Cork already. Mayo are in a team now that have seen Galway win Connacht the last 4 years in a row. And Mayo now, Andy Moran is at the helm, they're going to want to just bring Galway down. That's going to be the big thing, Connacht first. But if he can get those wins on the road in the National League, you know, come the business end of the championship, Mayo are going to
positive start.
Yeah.
2 boxes ticked there. On the other side, we're talking about momentum and teams having that energy around them with Donegal and Mayo. The Dubs, it was a difficult day at the office. They had a difficult day last week against Donegal, lads. What do we see from Ger Brennan? It was a big ask. We've seen lots of new faces. Are there any surprises what we've seen from Dublin so far, Stefan?
No. Just looking at the team on paper, I thought they done well to get back into the game last week, but I think that was maybe due to Donegal maybe fatiguing and dropping back into a zonal press again. But I just feel like they're missing 5 or 6 players. The old Dublin teams would have put the fear of God into you, and this team just doesn't strike the fear into anyone. I think teams could be looking at them. They're not looking at them as a scalp no more. It's just an opportunity to go out and get 2 points. I think they're over-reliant on Con. We've seen that. And it's hard to see where they go from here. They're obviously talking about slimming the squad.
Yeah.
They're obviously carrying big numbers, but where that quality is going to come from, I know the Ballyboden lads still have to come back, but they need more. They need more than 4 or 5 men, and it's hard to see where that's come from.
Ger Brennan alluded to it afterwards. We're talking about, can they find 5 or 6 players? And he had a panel, he spoke having a panel of 50 players. He said he's got some tough decisions to make this week, Marc. The panel's going to be cut.
But can you imagine training this week though? Like, if you know the panel's going to be cut, can you imagine the bite that's going to be
Turn the phone off.
this week? Yeah, but like, you know, in previous years, your incredible team, Paddy, during the National League, you could integrate maybe 3 or 4 players. You could start your 11 starters and integrate 3 or 4 players that Pat Gilroy or Jim Gavin or whoever Desi wanted to have a look at, but still have that quality that could see out most games. Dublin don't have that. Stefan is right. Like, you know, you've lost the key players that make them tick, the Fentons, these guys. And when you lose players of those calibers, you can't replace a player like Brian Fenton. You know, it's just so it's a big task ahead of Ger Brennan, and you know the Ballyboden fellas can't get back quick enough. You know, just to get a settled team and get a win on the board.
Right, well, we'll try and be a bit more positive now with our next segment. We'll go into competition time this week. Thanks, lads, for reviewing the football action. As the same as last week, you have the opportunity to win 2 tickets to any Allianz League game of your choice. All you have to do is leave a comment under our YouTube channel, Facebook or X, and Aisling will announce the winner on Friday's show. So make sure your comments are relatively sound, or we're definitely going to discount you from that. But there's 2 tickets up for grabs for any Allianz League fixture of your choice. Now, the segment last week, this was a bit of fun, lads, so there's a little bit of pressure across you 3 guys. So we have a quiz, a weekly quiz, not general knowledge, it's from the weekend's action, lads, so you should have some semblance of opportunity here. The buzzer blitz, as we call it. So last week, Owen Kelly was Tipperary's Owen Kelly at the leaderboard. He'd 2 from 2. Noel Connors actually got 2 correct, and I had Pádraig O'Hara beside me, lads. The Mayo man was struggling big time last week. He's 0. He's bringing up the rear on the leaderboard. Lads, if you want to grab your buzzers behind you there as well, that would help for the buzzer blitz.
Stefan, will you? Please.
So you have 30 seconds. There are 8 questions.
Just making sure.
Try not to break the buzzers, lads. Noel Connors did it. Really put one through the table last week. If you get the question wrong, so the first man in gets the answer. If you get it wrong, it will pass to one of your competitors. There is a score.
Hey, cheating.
There is a scoreboard, so there is a nice prize, not a few quid, Marc, for the winners at the end of the Allianz League campaign. And if you're in last place, there's also a forfeit on GAA Plus come summertime. So, first question, guys. Hands at the ready for the buzzer. This is an easy one. We touched on this. Who was Donegal's top scorer against Kerry at Ballyshannon yesterday? Marc?
Darrow Beale.
Darrow Beale is correct. One for Marc. Richie Moore on your side. Division 2 hurling. Who is currently sitting top of the table with 4 points?
Division 2 hurling. Wexford.
That's incorrect, lads. A hurling question.
Oh, sorry, sure. that's
Westmeath.
Jesus Christ. No, Soupy, come on.
Carlo.
3 incorrect. Leash is actually the answer.
Oh, it's Division 1A and B.
Okay, question 3. We're going to beat the buzzer.
that
Before the
was a trick
weekend, how many days had it been since Derry footballers' last victory?
Oh, come on.
It was on, if you were looking at the screen, lads, you would have seen it.
How many days?
How many days?
Closest.
I'll go closest, yeah.
550.
Oh,
Go on, Richie.
555.
Soupy.
590.
Soupy's the winner. It's 582 days. So we'll give you that. Last question. Which hurler scored 310 in Division 1A yesterday? Marc, you could just head out and get a coffee here. You don't know this one. You can buzz, lads.
Division 1A yesterday.
310. I'm going to do one more question because we give you one more
Richie,
football
you
question.
should get this.
Richie, you're going to be down with Pádraig O'Hara. Okay, the answer is Jason Ford. Last question, in the interest of time, and we did see this. Who scored a last-minute 2-pointer to earn victory for Meath?
Jack Flynn.
Soupy.
Oh, come on.
He was
Flynn,
first.
yeah.
He was
in
first.
first.
Jack Flint.
Jack Flynn
that's a
is correct.
joke.
Well done,
That's a
Soupy.
joke.
Very good, very good.
2 seconds.
One
Hey,
score, one, and Richie, you're struggling. You're down there.
right,
Pádraig
this-
O'Hara. We'll have to revisit this.
I need to revisit this.
Well, he shouted
We need
you
to
right. He
check
beat you to it. You were slow off the mark. That's the old age is kicking in for you,
Some
Marc.
fraud, Andrews, I tell you that.
That's it. That's all we've time for, lads. I'm being told to wrap it up. Marc, you can hit the road back, collect your check on the way out. Thank you to everyone for joining us on our Bank Holiday Monday show. Have a great week ahead. Aisling will be here this weekend to review the Allianz Hurling League actions. Footballers work harder, lads, so they have the weekend off. So we will be back next week to look back at that mouth-watering rematch of the All-Ireland Hurling Final on Saturday night between Tip and Cork and the rest of the Allianz Hurling League actions. Thanks again and have a great week.